Robert, let's start with the first issue. First question tonight, the executive orders that came out of the Biden's first, I don't know, whatever, how many hours in office. But the first question was, someone had just asked also, executive order versus executive action. What is an executive order? What does it require to become enforceable? And what can go into overturning an executive order that undoes something that was hitherto done? First question, what's an executive order?
It's really just that the executive branch has certain discretionary authority in certain areas of enforcement, and it's just the president codifying that and sort of clarifying it for the rest of the executive divisions within the executive branch of government underneath the president's control. So that's loosely all that it is. It's become very popular because it's become sort of symbolic. Obama really used it a lot after he lost the House and Senate. And Biden set a record. He did more executive orders after getting elected president within 24 hours than anyone ever. I don't know if that's a great achievement, really, but ideally, a good executive order is just clarifying executive direction. A questionable executive order is one that tries to be substitute legislation.
Okay, so that is, I guess, the main issue, because the executive orders. Whether or not I'm a fan of them ever, even under Trump, when he did the executive order as relates to social media, everyone's like, okay, it's a good executive order, but it doesn't have any actual impact. So the executive order, in order to be turned into something enforceable or something an actual directive, what is it? What's the next step that would need to happen in order for the executive order itself to become law or a form of enforceable action?
Well, really, constitutionally, ideally, all that an executive order is like the captain's directive to the lieutenants in the police department. Here's going to be our priorities this week. Here's where we're going to focus. Here's how we're going to achieve that, etc. So ideally, that's all that a constitutionally compliant executive order is. And there are certain areas where an executive order is within his discretion. So, for example, this was one of the questions on the locals board subscribers as well for tonight's session, was about the pipeline. Yep. And the thing with the pipeline is the reason why that requires presidential approval is it's across the U.S.-Canadian border. And Trump set this up. Trump established that the permit was contingent and could be revoked at any time by any president, himself or future. So that's why there's not much they can do legally. It's a cross-border pipeline, and the problem is, you could build the pipeline on this side or the Canadian side without ever connecting the two, and without needing presidential permission. But you obviously need presidential permission to connect it, and only connecting it gives it its value. And because it was an executive order, not a treaty, not a binding treaty, say with the Canadian government, it was not a law that was passed. It was not necessarily a binding contract that was agreed to, and even to the degree they're going to argue due process, and they will sue. The government, Alberta government, will likely sue. The companies involved will likely sue, but they're not likely to get anywhere because even under Trump's agreement to allow it, it was contingent, and it had a provision that it was like one of those trusts that you can revoke at any time. Like a revocable trust. And that's not really, there's not much you can do to make that legally enforceable. You take the risk knowing that can happen at any time. And Biden on this issue, now not on some others, but on this issue, he'd been pretty clear he was going to revoke it if he won.
But so the idea, this company will have invested, I don't know what stage they're at now, or these companies, it's JV, whatever. They've invested tons and tons of money and time into this. Out the window? Or is it going to be a question of renegotiating with the government and finding an alternative method so that Joe Biden can then issue another permit and save the project after he's done certain things to ensure it'll be compliant with X, Y, and Z? Is that what would be on the books?
Well, they've been basically fighting litigation now for a dozen years on this. So I think, though, my guess is they walk away. Alberta and some others will sue. They may sue under NAFTA, but the U.S. has never paid any damages under NAFTA. And there's parts of the way NAFTA was reconstructed that makes it difficult to get money from the U.S. for a violation of a trade agreement provision. And so I think that most lawyers who have looked at it don't think they can do much about it. It was always a big gamble, and the reality is they needed to get it started, to get it built before a president could revoke the permission in a meaningful way, and they didn't.
Okay, well, so I mean, and the amazing thing is, setting aside the legalities, because I would imagine they're going to argue, we call it droit acquis, or acquired rights, or some wrong where they've invested time, money, infrastructure, employees, all to have it arbitrarily, unilaterally revoked, even if it was a campaign promise that he's following through on. There will be litigation, see what the courts say, but okay.
And honestly, it was the way Trump structured it. If Trump wanted to protect that pipeline, he needed to do a different deal. He put in the deal so that a subsequent successor president could revoke it overnight without a problem. So that they can't really say, well, we invested this money believing this would happen. Yeah, but you also agreed that they could revoke it at any time. And so when you have that kind of clause, it's kind of it's an uphill battle legally.
Yeah, and what the thing that I found most remarkable about it was how the response from the Trudeau government, it exemplifies this political confirmation bias, where first thing that comes in is Biden takes an action which by all accounts would cost at least 11,000 jobs. Some people saying that those would have been temporary jobs, to which I might respond, a lot of construction jobs are temporary project-based jobs. And then you forget about the incidental job creation that would have occurred around those jobs. Set all that aside. Biden comes in day one, does something which is going to adversely affect Canada. And the response, because we want to like the administration, is we're very disappointed, but we look forward to working together with you on other issues. Whereas had this been someone else, it would have been screaming bloody murder until the cows came home, to mix a number of metaphors. Yep. So, okay, so we'll see. An uphill legal battle probably won't get anywhere. The issue might be renegotiating, or those in charge of the Keystone Pipeline. I was listening to a few interviews. Now they're saying the project now is different than what Obama opposed before Trump, and it's different than what Trump approved. So maybe they can succeed in convincing it's changed enough to have some sort of conditional or new permit issued, but we'll see where that goes. So,
I mean, I think there's some talk that they're just going to walk away from it at this point.
And then
so
what
that, I think that may happen just because they're tired of it.
What happens to all the pipeline that's been laid or that's sitting around waiting to get laid?
Yeah.